ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are studying the 6th chapter of Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga, and the name of the chapter is Non-attachment is complete self-abnegation. And Swamiji has been telling here that the only way to achieve total non-attachment is to completely negate, annihilate this I feeling. This I am so and so, I am the doer. This I, when it is completely negated, then only we attain non-attachment complete. Because I will necessarily draw my, and my equal to attachment. When we feel this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, that is attachment. So to remove mine, you have to remove I. Without removing I, you cannot remove mine completely. We feel sometimes that to some extent we have removed, but that some extent will not lead to the full non-attachment. And so, unless this I separate feeling goes away, the non-attachment will not be complete. That is the lesson. And now, we were reading the para, and we were towards the end of that para, and in that paragraph, Swamiji was telling about self-control. We have seen on the very first day that Karma Yoga does not mean doing karma only. Karma Yoga requires us to several practices Swamiji is prescribing. Every now and then we meet with a different practice. And here Swamiji has prescribed the practice of self-control. Unless we control ourselves, this I will not be annihilated. Unless we control ourselves, non-attachment cannot be achieved. So, this great art of self-control. For that you know, remember that this series was started with Patanjali Sutra. That is the one of the sciences of self-control. Of course, Gita and all the Upanishads prescribe various ways in which this I can be annihilated. And now, reading that toward the end of that para, we read last 2-3 sentences of that paragraph. Nothing has power over the self of man until the self becomes a fool and loses independence. So another point here is that ignorance is the root cause. Fool means he is not exercising his intelligence properly in the direction needed for the realization of Atman. He is not using his intellect properly. So he becomes a fool and loses independence. In this matter we have thought of freedom of the senses is losing independence. Freedom from the senses is the real freedom. And so Swamiji told us to work like a master, not like a slave to the Indriyas. So, when we become fool, what happens? So, by non-attachment, you overcome and deny the power of anything to act upon you. So, when I feel so and so is dependent on me, that is actually my slavery, my foolishness. If that person becomes unhappy, I become unhappy. It is very easy to say that nothing has the right to act upon you until you allow it to do so. But what is the true sign? So it is very easy to say. Not only say, but emotionally we may feel, we may delude ourselves and others. Others will not be deluded. We will be deluded by thinking that I have no ego, I have all the self-control, I have full non-attachment. Most of the people feel like this, that they are living unattached in the world. But Swamiji says it is very easy to say that nothing has the right to act upon you until you allow it to do so. But what is the true sign of the man who really does not allow anything to work upon him. So we have to find what is his characteristics, what is his sign. We have to find it about ourselves. Who is neither happy nor unhappy when acted upon by the external world. I have to discuss these two words, happiness and unhappiness. If we are not happy, what we are seeking? Swamiji has told us on the first page of this book, pleasure is not the goal of life. Knowledge is the goal. And knowledge of truth, Swamiji means. And now let me discuss three words, pleasure, happiness and bliss. Pleasure is from the senses. When the senses come in touch with object, what is generated is called pleasure. And this is very, very temporary. So long as the object is touching, the pleasure is there. When the object is not touching, pleasure is gone. Happiness is a quality of the mind. And I have told you several incidents, if you remember, that people are happy with practically nothing. People are unhappy with the whole world possession. So happiness is a quality of the mind. But mind itself plays tricks upon us. There is something beyond mind. And that Swamiji is going to tell us more graphically in the next chapter. Bliss is something which is our real nature. Bliss does not depend upon whether I is there or not there. Bliss is something inside. Let me quote an example once I have told you. Sri Ramakrishna, when he was in Bhava, intoxicated in the Bhava, he could not physically keep his balance. He fell down and the bone of the arm was displaced, not broken. So the doctors put a lint and put his hand like this. Now, one of his disciples, a great Vedanti later on, from the beginning, Swami Turiyananda, he was a boy in those days, Hari was his name. So hearing this incident, he came to see Sri Ramakrishna and asked, Maharaj, I have heard that you fell down and broke your hand. So Sri Ramakrishna is showing him, see how painful it is. And the doctors have put a lint, I cannot make it straight also. He was trying to show his pain, which was there in the body. But Turiyananji or Hari saw for maybe about 5 minutes and then said, Maharaj, let it be, I see you are immersed in bliss. And to which Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, rascal has caught me. This cunning fellow has caught me. That means he had to agree. So you understand now, bliss is a very inner quality. Bliss is the very nature of Atman. Pleasure and pain are outside. Even so-called happiness and misery are outside. And that is why we will not be affected, either happy or unhappy, by people doing something. Because we have controlled ourselves. And this is purely Karma Yoga as taught by the second chapter of the Gita. Second chapter tells us to go on doing our work and not be affected by pleasure or pain, heat or cold, likes or dislikes, then you will be successful. So that is what Swamiji is telling here. So that is the sign. The sign is that good or ill fortune, so fortune is outside. You may get thousands of rupees, you may lose all your money. Causes no change in his mind. In all conditions, he continues to remain the same. This samatha is what is taught in the second chapter of the Gita. And what is the sameness? He is filled with bliss. Atmarati Atmakrida. Now, Swamiji exemplifies this by one incident, famous incident. There was a great sage in India called Vyasa. This Vyasa is known as the author of the Vedanta aphorisms. and was a holy man. Holy man means he was a sadhu, they are telling. His father had tried to become a very perfect man and had failed. His grandfather had also tried and failed. His great-grandfather had similarly tried and failed. What he wants to say is, he comes from a tradition of sadhakas who had tried their best, though they did not succeed completely. He himself did not succeed perfectly, but his son Shuka was born perfect. Vyasa taught his son wisdom, and after teaching him the knowledge of truth himself, he sent him to the court of King Janaka. He was a great king and was called Janaka Videha, one who has no body consciousness, though he was a king. Videha means without a body. Although a king, he had entirely forgotten that he was a body. He felt that he was a spirit all the time. So various words are used in language, they mean he is conscious. He was not conscious of his body, he was conscious of himself as spirit. This boy Shuka was sent to be taught by him. The king knew that Vyasa's son was coming to him to learn wisdom. Knowledge, Swamiji has translated here as wisdom. So he made certain arrangements beforehand. And when the boy presented himself at the gates of the palace, the guards took no notice of him whatsoever. They only gave him a seat, and he sat there for 3 days and nights. Sat there for 3 days and nights. Nobody speaking to him, nobody asking him who he was or whence he was. He was the son of a very great stage. His father was honored by the whole country, and he himself was a most respectable person. Yet the low, vulgar guards of the palace would take no notice of him. After that, suddenly the ministers of the king and all the big officials came there and received him with the greatest honors. They conducted him in and showed him into splendid rooms, gave him the most fragrant baths and wonderful dresses, and for 8 days they kept him there in all kinds of luxury. Thus, that solemnly serene face of Shuka did not change even to the smallest extent by the change in the treatment accorded to him. All these things we really understand when we superimpose it upon ourselves. When we see an object, we do not really understand. Let us superimpose this upon ourselves. We are not great like Shuka. But if you go to somebody and he keeps us waiting at the gate for 3 nights, and then suddenly everybody honors us, what would happen to us? That we have to think. That solemnly serene face of Shuka did not change even to the smallest extent by the change in the treatment accorded to him. He was the same in the midst of this luxury as when waiting at the door. We can quote another example. Swami Vivekananda's example. We have to remember, he went to Chicago to attend the Parliament of Religions with the help of some friends of his in Chennai and the king of this place where I am sitting, Khetri. And when he reached there, he came to know that the date of enrollment is over. First point. Secondly, he did not bring with him some formal letter of representation of some society. So an individual is not admitted there. You have to be representing somebody. He came as a representative of Hinduism. So he thought, and the Chicago was becoming more and more costly. So he went to Boston, which is relatively cheaper in American standards. And there he met Professor John Wright, who was a professor of ancient history there. And he, while talking to Swamiji, found out Swamiji's erudition. And he asked Swamiji, why you don't attend the Parliament of Religions? He said that I came for that, but I have no introduction. Then John Wright wrote, to ask Swamiji for introduction is to ask the sun its right to shine. He is more learned than all our learned people put together. This is what John Wright wrote. And he said that the head of that association is known to me. You give this letter to him, he will admit you, though you are late. Fun is that when Swamiji came to Chicago, he lost the address of the President of the Parliament. He lost the address of the Parliament, though the letter was with him. So what to do? He came out of the train, walked a little, and then thought, where do I go? He came back and spent the night in a carriage of the goods train which was on the station. Next day he got up and started walking. After walking a little, he just sat down, thinking that I do not know anything. Let God decide. And at that very moment, the window of the opposite house opened and Mrs. Hale came. And she asked, are you a delegate for the Parliament? He said, yes, but I have lost the address and all that. Come to our house. I know I will take you. Now, that night when he went back to the goods train, he thought, what foolish I am. On the suggestion of some boys I came here. I don't know anything now. I do not see how I will attend the Parliament. Then the thought came to him, you did not come by some boys. You came because God brought you here. And you do not see how you will attend the Parliament, but God sees everything. With this conviction, he slept happily. Now, next day this happened. Then he went to the Parliament. He had no time and he had not prepared anything. Now, on the first day, everybody has to speak for 5 minutes only, introducing what religion he is representing and thanking for the welcome given that day. Now, in the morning, when his name was called, he said, not now, next. Whole morning session was over. Afternoon session started. Then near him the French delegate sat. And he said, Swami, sometime you have to speak. So now you get up. So he agreed. And he went to the mic. No, mic was not there in those days. He went to the stage to speak. And his own language. I remembered my master. I bowed down to Saraswati, the goddess of speech, and I opened my mouth. So who spoke? His guru spoke by the language given by Saraswati. Now the first sentence, sisters and brothers of America. And that had such a galvanizing effect that they all stood up and cheered him. For 2 minutes he had to stop. And when he resumed, spoke for about 3 minutes more. And when he concluded, again he had a standing ovation. And then everybody came to shake his hands, and girls and ladies and everybody's. And then in the newspapers next morning, orator by divine right and best speaker of the Parliament, and his photo was flashed. He is writing a letter to his friends in India. People were afraid how he will face this honor given to him. Almost exactly like this. Circumstances were like that. Their King Janaka had arranged like that. Here God has arranged like that. Circumstances have become like that. On the previous night you do not know how you will attend the Parliament. And this night you are the best speaker in the world. So he writes that, how I could digest this, by the power of whom I could digest that previous night's insulting atmosphere, by his very guidance, by his very blessings, I could digest this highest honor in the world. So, these examples are not only legendary, they are not only in the books, though they are very rare, as Swamiji has said. But when we see around us, we will find people like that to inspire us. Then he was brought before the king. The king was on his throne. Music was playing and dancing and other amusements were going on. The king then gave him a cup of milk, full to the brim, and asked him to go 7 times round the hall without spilling even a drop. Imagine all this upon ourselves and then we understand. The boy took the cup and proceeded in the midst of the music and the attraction of the beautiful faces. As desired by the king, 7 times did he go round and not a drop of the milk was spilled. The boy's mind could not be attracted by anything in the world unless he allowed it to affect him. And when he brought the cup to the king said to him, "What your father has taught you and what you have learned yourself, I can only repeat. You have known the truth, go home." So, knowing the truth finally gave him the full control, but because of the control he could achieve this. Neither unhappy when he was ill-treated, nor happy when he was well-treated, not attracted by the dancing and music and beautiful faces, and 7 times he takes round without spilling. So, thus the man that has practiced control over himself. So please remember again and again, if you have to be karma yogis, talk will not do. You have to practice the highest self-control to be karma yogis. Thus the man that has practiced control over himself cannot be acted upon by anything outside. There is no more slavery for him. That is the slavery to the outside world, if we are affected. His mind has become free. Such a man alone is fit to live well in this world. Such a man alone is fit to live well in this world. We generally find men holding two opinions regarding the world. Some are pessimists and say how horrible this world is, how wicked. Some others are optimistic and say how beautiful this world is, how wonderful. To those who have not controlled their own minds, the world is either full of evil or at best a mixture of good and evil. This very world will become to us an optimistic world when we become masters of our own minds. Nothing will then work upon us as good or evil. We shall find everything to be in its proper place. Good or evil, it is in its proper place. To be harmonious. Some men who begin by saying that the world is a hell often end by saying that it is a heaven when they succeed in the practice of self-control. So if the world does not affect us, we are happy always, so it is heaven. If we are genuine karma yogis, genuine, not by in name, not by our own feeling, but genuine, and wish to train ourselves to the attainment of this state, so it's a regular training to attain this state. It won't automatically fall. Wherever we may begin in selfishness, we may begin anywhere. We are sure to end in perfect self-abnegation. So this self-control is a corollary of self-abnegation. If I feeling is there, then insult and non-insult, all these will be felt. If I is not there, insult will not be felt. 2 examples I will give here. One is Swami Vivekananda has given about Bhagavan Buddha. On a stormy, rainy night, he was caught in the storm and rain, and he was standing below a tree. And opposite there was a house, a rich merchant's house, rich farmer's house you may say. And he is teasing Bhagavan Buddha. My house is closed, all the grains are properly stored, let the rain fall. Buddha would reply from there, I have controlled all my senses, I have no desires, let the rain fall. He would say, my children are happy, they are secure, everything is secure, let the rain fall. Bhagavan Buddha would say, I have nothing to get in this world, let the rain fall. Finally, it resulted in that man understanding and falling at the feet of Buddha and becoming his disciple. So, he did not allow anything outside to disturb him because of his self-knowledge. The other incident I was about to tell, Swami Saradananji, in his time, some of our young people, in their youth, they were members of a society or independently by using bombs to drive away the British. Now some of them understood that that is not the aim of life. The aim of life is to realize God. So they wanted to join the Ramakrishna mission. Some people are afraid that we will be in government blacklist if these people join the mission. Sadhana Swami said they have a good desire, they must join. Now one of them was already in a blacklist. And so some responsible person had to go to the police station. Some responsible person had to go and stand guarantee for his behavior. Saradanji went along with that young sannyasi, and they wanted him to sign someplace, he signed. When they came back, the sannyasi started weeping. Maharaj, you are such a great person, and for me you have to bear so much insult. He said, where is the insult? They asked me to sign, I signed, the work was done. He said, you are such a great person, they did not even offer you a seat to sit upon. Again and again when he started telling like that, he said, my boy, who does feel insult? Mind. And my mind is given to God. So your insult does not reach there. Now you see, nothing outside will reach him when the mind is given to God. So these are the various examples. Now what happens when we hear this example? Na? We clap, oh wonderful, wonderful. That should not be the way. How much we can follow it. That is the way to understand, is to feel how much we can do it. My teacher used to say, first feel the gap and then try to fill up the gap. So, let us feel the gap and try to fill up the gap. Its very atmosphere will be blessed. Every human face there will be good. Such is the end and aim of Karma Yoga, and such is its perfection in practical life. Now, here Swamiji is going to tell us something shocking, something extremely wonderful and truth. Our various yogas do not conflict with each other. Each of them leads us to the same goal and makes us perfect. Only each has to be strenuously practiced. So Karma Yoga has to be practiced. The whole secret is in practicing. First you have to hear, then think, and then practice. This is what I was telling, the wonderful thing. Swamiji is not talking about Jnana Yoga. We know in the Upanishad, Atma Vayare Drashtavya, Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, Nididhyasitavya, Evam Vayare Drashtavya. Atma has to be realized. By hearing, thinking, and properly meditating, it has to be experienced. In Swamiji is telling this in Karma Yoga. And he is telling all the 4 yogas have to be practiced. And what is to be practiced? Shravan Manan Nididhyasana in Karma Yoga. So unless we hear the truth, as That day I was jokingly telling that Swamiji's no philosophy you read. Then we have to read Swamiji's Karma Yoga, I was telling. So unless we hear the truth again and again, not once, it will not come to our dharana. It is impossible to practice Karma Yoga unless we hear the truth told by the Shastras, by a competent teacher again and again. And then think. What is then think? Our thinking has been vitiated by our wrong knowledge through centuries or years together. And we have to correct it. In the light of truth which we hear from the scriptures, we have to revise our thinking, feeling, will, everything. That is called manana, thinking. Thinking means not thinking something fresh, original. We have to think what the scriptures have told us, how to apply the implications. Just now as Swamiji has shown. So the implications of the truth we hear have to be thought out properly. Our present thinking, feeling, will has to be revised in the light of the truth we hear. And then Swamiji said, then practice. Then by meditation, you have to absorb it. Then the practice will come. So the standard method Swamiji is telling is true of all yogas. Whether Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga or Karma Yoga, we must listen the truth, we must think or revise our thinking, we must meditate and absorb it completely, and then it will come into practice. You have first to hear about it and understand what it is. Only hearing with my ears will not do. Feel it really. And many things which you do not understand will be made clear to you by constant hearing and thinking. You see, so Shravana Manana has to be practiced repeatedly till the truth fully comes to you. Then only Karma Yoga is possible, please. And in the first chapter itself, Swamiji has told, thought is more important than action. And so, our karma will become real Karma Yoga only if we follow Shravan, Manan, Nidhasan continuously. Will be made clear to you by constant hearing and thinking. It is hard to understand everything at once. So practical life is this. Some people say, oh, I have read this, I have read that. That is not the way. It is hard to understand everything at once. The explanation of everything is, after all, in yourself. Now that Swamiji has told in the first chapter also, knowledge is within us, but by continuously hearing and thinking, that will come out. It is like rubbing the two woods together to bring out fire. So unless we continuously hear and think about it, the knowledge which is already inside will not come out. No one was ever really taught by another. See Swamiji's balance. Each of us has to teach himself. The external teacher offers only the suggestion which rouses the internal teacher to work to understand things. This first chapter Swamiji had told this. So by the knowledge from outside, it has to be rubbed against the wrong knowledge in our mind, then the real inside knowledge will shine like the sun. That is what Gita says. Then things will be made clearer to us by our own power of perception and thought. By our own power of perception means actual experience and thought. This will be aroused by continuously thinking and hearing and thinking. And we shall realize then them in our own souls. So, finally it has to be experienced or realized in our... What is the realization? Today it is an idea. If it becomes real in our life, it is called realization. To make the idea into reality, that is the meaning of the word realization. And that comes by constant hearing, thinking and meditating. And that realization will grow into the intense power of will. So though Swamiji has told in one place, hearing, thinking and practice, now he makes it more clear. I told it there itself, that when you realize it, then it becomes practical. You cannot just practice what you have heard. When that what you have heard becomes your experience, then karma will come out. See, we thought in the beginning that this chapter we entered the real karma yoga. We will grow into the intense power of will. First it is feeling, then it becomes willing, you see, still more clear. First it becomes feeling, not only thinking, feeling. So, the Shravana itself has to be done by the heart, I told on some days. Neither by ear nor by brain, but by heart. So first it has to be feeling, and then it will become will. It will come into action automatically. Then it becomes willing, and out of that willing comes the tremendous force for work that will go through every vein and nerve and muscle. So much absorption should be done that it goes into every vein and muscle and nerve, and so automatically it comes out as work. It is not simply by working. And these have to be practiced separately. I will tell you an incident. There was talk between two very, very senior sadhus of the mission. And one of them said that only work is not the method, we must cultivate the right consciousness toward the work. The other man, he had the blessing of God, you may say, the other man said that we have to work, and these correct ideas and thoughts and the consciousness will come while doing work. In Bengali, kotte kotte eshe jabe. I will tell you a little in Bengali. Karma we are doing, bhaver janye alada practice korte hobe. উনি বলছেন যে ভাবটা আপনার থেকে এসে যাবে, কর্ম করতে করতে ভাব এসে যাবে. So the right consciousness or the right attitude will come while doing work. The first man said, I have not seen this. I have not seen, please remember all of us, very senior Swami is talking, I have not seen that by doing work the ideas become correct. While doing, politics comes. While doing, clashes come. While doing, ego comes. While doing, I see all these things come. Not bhava. For bhava, we must practice separately how to inculcate that bhava. And that Swamiji has been telling in Karma Yoga repeatedly. So sometimes I feel pain when people say they are Karma Yogis, have not read Swamiji's Karma Yoga, or have not felt each point which Swamiji is telling. Without that we cannot be Karma Yogis. So, Mahapurush Maharaj, Sri Ramakrishna's disciple, has said, Bhava Yukta Karma, if karma done with the proper attitude, proper spirit, then it has a spiritual meaning. Bhavahin karma to janjal. That karma which is not done with the proper bhava is only a paraphernalia and we get lost into it. Is a network, janjal. Until the whole mass of your body is changed into an instrument of the unselfish yoga of work. So much you have to hear, so much you have to think, so much you have to absorb it, that it becomes an automatic power of work. And the desired result of perfect self-abnegation, and then this I will be annihilated, and utter unselfishness is duly attained. So that should be the result. Then only we become perfect karma yogis. that this self, small self goes away, real unselfishness comes. This attainment does not depend on any dogma or doctrine or belief. What is dogma or doctrine? Doctrine is certain theorems proved intellectually, and dogma is something told without any proof. God has told like this, Jesus has told like this, our people have told, you have to accept this. No reasoning, no question. That is called dogma. Or belief. Whether one is Christian or Jew or Gentile, it does not matter. Are you unselfish? That is the question. If you are, you will be perfect without reading a single religious book. Again I joke, but you have to read Swamiji's Karma Yoga. Without going into a single church or temple. Each one of our yogas is fitted to make man perfect, even without the help of the others. We have seen in the last chapter that all blend together. There is nothing called independent yoga. Only that which predominates we give the name. On that background we should understand this. Because they have all the same goal in view, the yogas of work of wisdom and of devotion, here does not mention that Patanjali yoga at all, are all capable of serving as direct and independent means for the attainment of moksha. But what is Karma Yoga? Up till now, we have seen all knowledge, we have seen all devotion, so that is Karma Yoga. Then it is independent. Fools alone say that work and philosophy are different, not the learned. This from quotation from the Gita. Sankhya yogo pruthak bala pravadanti na pandita. The learned know that, though apparently different from each other, they at last lead to the same goal of human perfection. At last. That means by karma, when we purify ourselves, knowledge automatically dawns, and then we reach the perfection. So, 6th chapter I have finished. Now the 7th chapter, the name is freedom. And Swamiji is here going to discuss what we can call the anatomy of freedom. Swamiji has repeatedly told us the aim of life is knowledge, the aim of life is freedom, the aim of life is freedom through knowledge. Now what is the freedom? That one has to understand. And the spirit I will tell you now itself. So long as we possess a mind, we are bound. When we come out of the mind, we are eternally free. That is what Swamiji is going to tell us. And how to come out of the mind? He says that maybe a handful of people in the whole world have that knowledge, have that will to say, I will not get attached, and they are free. But for common man, as we call him, as for all of us, one has to enter the karma, and there Swamiji will show two methods clearly. Karma on the basis of knowledge, karma on the basis of bhakti. One has to adopt one of these very clearly, and then gain that final knowledge by which we come out of this mind itself. So long as the mind is there, we are bound. So long as we are free from the mind, we are eternally free. That is what Swamiji is going to teach us. And then he is going to tell us it is not easy. Those who can have strong will, they can. Otherwise, we will have to go through karma to come out of it. We have to accept karma, but go on improving the attitude behind the karma, either through discrimination or through bhakti, and then only we will reach the goal. So, the purport I have told you, from the next class, next Monday, we will take up the 7th chapter. 8th chapter is a summary of all chapters. So we have to learn our lessons from the 7th chapter now. So on the next Monday, we shall start reading this chapter on freedom. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम तत्सत्। श्री रामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
प्रणाम महाराज।